Community Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Sarah Trotter, and as some of you may be aware, previously Vice Chairman to Councillor Ray Wootton. Therefore, I make no secret I have big boots to fill, and thank Ray personally for all his hard work as Chairman over the last 3 years, and furthermore for acting as my mentor. Thank you, Ray. I particularly welcome 2 new members to the committee. Our new Vice Chairman, Councillor Barry Dobson, although I do know he's a seasoned councillor, so not too new to everything. And also welcome to Councillor Richard Dixon-Warren. Welcome, Richard. I also want to welcome our existing members of the committee, Councillor Philip Knowles and Councillor Hilary Restrop. Just a personal note, Councillor Ray Wootton has attended today, I think for moral support at my first meeting. So thank you, Ray. And I hope that, I know the hot weather's not been helping you, but I hope you continue to recover and come back and take this seat. No, but I'll keep it warm for you in the meantime. Thank you. Last but no means least, I welcome all officers and cabinet members to this meeting. In particular, Serena Brown, if I can read it from here, Sustainability and Climate Change Officer. Welcome Debbie Roberts, Organisational Development and Change Manager. Thank you for making me have all these long titles at my first meeting. And welcome Craig Spence, Assistant Director of Housing, Director of Housing and Property, Andrew Cotton, and Jodie Archer, who is our Head of Housing Services. So, if you wish to ask a question, please indicate to the Vice Chairman, Councillor Barry Dobson. This meeting will be recorded and the recordings retained in accordance with the Council's documentation retention policy. So, item 1, comments from members of the public. As far as I'm aware, we have no members of the public present or likely to attend. Is that so? Thank you, Amy. Oh, before I forget, welcome, Amy. That was very, and Jordan's gone. But thank you, Amy. I hadn't forgotten you. I was just looking into the phone. But thank you, Amy. Amy's going to be keeping me in order. Item 2, apologies for absence. So I've received apologies from Councillor Richard Cleaver, who's on holiday. Also, Cabinet Member Robert Reid, who gives his apologies. Do I have any other apologies? I think we're all here. Nope. Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any members who have an interest to declare? And these can be declared during the meeting. Moving on to item 4, the minutes from the meeting held on the 28th of April 2022. If you want to refer to pages 3 to 16 in your main agenda pack for the last meeting. Do I have any questions or corrections? Sorry, Councillor Knowles. I think so, yeah.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just a couple of questions about the implication or the meaning of some of these things. On 61, page 7, at the top, the Cabinet Member for Housing and Property introduced a progress report on the Council's full recovery of compliance. That isn't meant to imply that we've got a full recovery of compliance, is it? Because we've not got clearance yet. Why is full recovery? Why not just recovery? And later in that same thing, the Director of Housing and Property confirmed that out of 6,000 tenants in South Kesteven, 12.84 had responded to the Big Listen survey, which had doubled to 25%. Or was it 12.84%? Was it? What does that mean? Has anybody any clue what that means?
Yeah, thank you, Philip. Yeah, good point. Obviously, the cabinet member's not present for housing and property, but I'm sure that our director for housing can hopefully answer that. Councillor Knowles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think in terms of the way the minutes read, I think a progress report to the council's full recovery and compliance would read better, wouldn't it? And reproduce the meaning of Councillor Reid's introduction. And I think in relation to the 12.84% had responded, which had since doubled. So we had an initial response rate of 12.8 and that doubled to 25. And I think as is covered in the pack later on with the latest compliance report, that increased to just under 30% response rate. Happy to clarify those points. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I've just spoken to our democratic officer, Amy. She's happy to, reiterate and make
Sorry,
it
Amy.
better to it. No, don't apologise. Have you got another mention within the minutes?
It was just that on page 12, a query was raised whether the Grantham Charter Trustee had been contacted in our activities. This is to do with the Queen's Jubilee. And a query was raised, had they contacted Bourne Town Council, and the Deputy Chief Executive would check as to whether they have been contacted or not. Had they?
I'm not aware, but I can find out for you. I'll speak to the Deputy Chief Executive and raise that is that okay with you? And I'll come back.
It should have been an action point.
Yeah.
Clearly said he'd do something, so it's an action point.
Yeah.
We believe that he never contacted Bourne Town Council.
Okay. Yeah. No, that should be done, and we'll ensure that happens. Thank you.
Thanks so much indeed.
Yeah, just to highlight when you are speaking, if you could put your microphones on because we are being recorded. It's fine. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, I've just got one point that I picked up on. So if you look on page 4, action note 59, chairman of the previous meeting noted an electronic copy of the agenda for the meeting of Lincolnshire Police and Crime Panel will be sent to committee members from the meeting dated the 10th of June. This meeting date was actually put back and it's tomorrow, so on the 24th of June. So therefore, apologies, it's not being sent yet, but that is something that I will do as being a member of the Police and Crime Panel, if that's satisfactory for you all. Thank you. Do I have any more comments in relation to the minutes from the previous meeting? Okay, I'll take that as a no. So please can I have a proposer, please, for the last meeting minutes? Councillor Philip Knowles, and I'll have a seconder. Yeah, seconder, Councillor Hilary Westrop. Thank you. All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so they're carried, subject to the few changes that we've agreed. Thank you. So, moving on to item 5, which is updates on actions agreed at the previous meeting. If we turn to page 17. So, yeah, I received an email last week from Councillor Richard Cleaver. He was asking in relation to, we had a talk from Chief Inspector Phil Vickers, and I think he had a question in relation to the talk that we received, and Amy, our Democratic Service Officer, is just going to reiterate the question and the actions. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So Councillor Richard Cleaver requested a response from the portfolio holder to the suggestion from the Chief Inspector Vickers that South Kesteven could consider more proactive use of legal powers in relation to antisocial behaviour, which is mentioned in item 60 in the minutes of the previous meeting. I'm just going to hand over to Andrew Cotton, Chairman, if that's okay, for the update on this.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so Councillor Annie Mason has been pleased to provide the following comment. So the neighbourhoods team and CCTV work in partnership with the police and have been involved in a number of targeted operations. The most recent was a night of proactive activity aimed at disrupting antisocial behaviour associated with vehicles in the Grantham area. The operation saw one vehicle seized for having no valid insurance policy, a further 2 motorists reported for speeding, 2 more reported for having no MOT, and a further driver reported for driving without due care and attention. The operation also resulted in 3 people being issued £150 fines for littering directly related to vehicle ASB. Neighbourhood officers also work with the police to use ANPR cameras to establish vehicle owner details and request vehicle stops as part of ongoing fly tipping investigations. And there are plans for a day of action with the Lincolnshire Police Rural Crime Team to tackle illegal waste sites and bogus waste carriers. The team also carry out patrols in our parks to engage with young people, dog owners and park users in general and help prevent antisocial behaviour, and of course worked as part of a wider public sector team response during the COVID-19 pandemic, ensuring restrictions were complied with. Much of the work of the team is reacting to requests for services from our residents. The team of 5 officers dealt with over 3,300 complaints in 2021, ranging from environmental crime, neighbourhood nuisance and pests. In many cases, antisocial behaviour and neighbourhood nuisance complaints are resolved without the need for formal enforcement action. However, where this is necessary and legislation allows and evidence is available, we provide reassurance that action is taken. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Obviously, this will be minuted, but I will, when Richard comes back from holiday, I will obviously highlight that you've given a good in-depth answer on behalf of our cabinet member Annie Mason. Thank you, Andrew. And I want to really support. It is fairly new to Lincolnshire Police, the rural crime team, and they do. Hopefully, they'll do a fantastic job. As was highlighted in the last meeting, we've got very high volume theft at the moment, particularly of horse trailers and equipment, and that it is a problem within Lincolnshire. And various issues, and particularly the fly tipping. It's particularly good with the ANPR cameras. They're the secret cameras that you don't actually know are there, and they're logging any vehicles that pass through at particular days and times, particularly at night. And there is a central database, and it is a really good tool for the police. So yeah, it's good news to hear. Thank you. I just want to go to the action sheet, which is on page 17, just for a note really about the community awards. Unfortunately, it was for the community engagement manager to explore community award categories and consider breaking down one category into 2, best school project and environmental project. The categories for the community awards had already been listed in SK today, which had gone to print at the time of the meeting of the Rural and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So unfortunately for this year, they were unable to make changes. However, this will be something that will be addressed for the next awards. So is there any other comments in relation to matters? Councillor Knowles.
Again, Philip. Just a comment, if I may. It said about 2 or 3 meetings ago, there's a lady from the community officer group that were going to come on. She promised at that time she'll be attending parish council meetings on a regular basis. And subsequently in these minutes, it says that the PCSOs, and Bourne have now got one, praise me, but they would be attending parish council meetings although we requested a representative of the police to attend a parish council meeting some 4 or 6 weeks ago, we've still not seen hide and hair of them, either of them. So either they don't exist or Bourne doesn't, one of the two. And so I really think that that is an important thing, that I'm not talking about every tiny parish council, because that would be very onerous, but Bourne being one of the 4 big towns, one would have thought that they would have made an effort to get to one of our meetings in the last 12 or 18 months.
I'm with you on that one, Councillor Knowles. And as you probably aware, I did raise it, didn't I, at the last meeting. I've not had a Police and Crime Commission meeting yet, but I would hopefully raise it again. A couple of our parish council meetings received a report from the PCSO for the area, which actually was helpful, although it's nice to put a name to a face, and I agree with you, particularly for Bourne as it's a big town, but it was sort of meeting halfway, so that maybe that's something for discussion going forward, and I'm happy to raise that with the Police and Crime Commissioner. Obviously he doesn't deal with operational questions, but I think it's the right floor to raise, certainly. And I'm with you. I think we do need to know who our local PCSO is. They're busy, and I accept that, and they're short on numbers. But yeah, no, even if it's once so often. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. We now move to item 6, which is the corporate plan key performance indicators 2021 to 22 Q4. So if you want to refer to pages 19 to 40 of your agenda pack, you will see that this is for noting and comment, no vote required. Members to consider if any concerns highlighted by the report require additional investigation to be added to the work programme. I'm delighted that we're joined by Debbie Roberts, who I said is the organisational and change manager. I think that's right, Debbie. If you want to do an introduction, and obviously we have members of housing to pick up any questions raised by the committee members. Sorry, just a moment. Sorry, Philip, can you put your microphone off now? Oh, can you put that one? Yeah, thank you. I know. Right, thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is to present the end of year performance data to the committee. So as the committee are aware, the corporate plan has been in place since the 1st of October 2020, and in that the council has agreed its actions, key performance indicators and targets. So this report, the Q2 report's already been fed to the committee, and this is to provide the committee with how the end of year performance for 21-22, how the data is perceived. So from the covering report, you'll note that there were 11 actions which are green, there are 2 which are amber, and there are 2 which are red. So what I wanted to do is just go through some of those priorities, and just there is some commentary in there for the members to discuss. So if we go to the start, which are healthy and strong communities 2, this was around working with the SK Community Hub. Obviously, the council's done a great deal of community and voluntary sector work. So pleased to note that that's green. Health and Strong Communities 4, which is continuing to work in partnership with the police and the community, investing in the CCTV service. That's obviously green as well. There's no issues with that. Mental health.
Sorry, Debbie, has anyone got their phone on near the microphone? Sometimes that can have an effect. I don't know. Is that better? Thank you.
Thank you. Healthy and Strong Communities, KPI number 8 is around the mental health challenge. Pleased to say that this is also green. The council's got a strong mental health working party and a members working party as well, which has a lot. It's got 22 members of staff on it now, fully first trained. We've got 5 counsellors as well that are mental health first aid trainers. Health and strong communities, number 9, is around funding sources for the voluntary and cultural sector within the district. That's for noting that that is also green. Healthy and strong communities 10 is around protecting vulnerable residents and safeguarding processes. That is also green, and to note as well that they received a green standard for the Section 11 audit through the strategic management group for linkage safeguarding back in September. Healthy and strong communities 12, which is promoting and progressing the equality objectives. Obviously that is green as well. As we move on to housing that meets the needs of residents 1, this is where we turn into the red status. There is some commentary there around housing completion. Obviously, if members have got any further questions, they've got some housing officers here today that could answer those. Housing that meets the needs of residents, KPI 2 is working to reduce and prevent homelessness. There is the proportion of prevention cases resolved successfully was red, but noting that there are 2 other areas there that are green, as well as 1 that is amber. Housing that meets the needs of residents, number 3, is increasing the supply of high quality sustainable council houses. It is for noting that in the commentary that there have been some council houses that were due for completion, and actually June 22, I think those ones there on Trinity Road are due for completion this month. Housing that meets the needs of residents, number 4, is around undertaking a planning review to improve performance and support local sustainable high quality growth. That is all green. And for noting that the planning application determinations, major applications determined in time, which is 91%, and non-major applications determined in time, 89%. Housing that meets the needs of residents, number 5, is undertaking a housing review to provide the highest quality service to our tenants. So we're green on most of those actions, but the one that ended red was around voids. Moving on to housing that meets the needs of residents, number 6 is working with housing associations. The committee to note that that is green, as is the local plan. Housing meets the need of residents, number 7. Those items are all green as well. Moving on to housing meets the needs of residents, number 9, ensuring that major developments across South Christina are of a high quality with good design. That is green as well. And the last one is prioritise bringing private sector empty homes back into use, and those are green rating as well. If members have got any questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, what we'll do is we'll take any natural pauses, we'll take questions, because there's quite a lot of data and charts to go through. So I'll open it up to committee members for questions. Anyway, Councillor Westrop.
Is there a point at which it goes from amber to green or amber to red, or how does it go from one to the other? Various things are green and various things are amber. Is there a benchmark for 60% correct, or how does it work?
Who wants to take that?
I think generally the ones that are amber are off target by around 10%, or they have milestones achieved that are slightly delayed, but they've got a resolution in place to resolve those. Actions that are red are those that are falling significantly below, or they're overdue and they don't have a specific timeline of when they're going to be resolved.
Green is achieved.
Say that again, sorry.
So green is achieved.
Yeah, all the ones that are green they've met their target or gone above the target that was that was identified at the start of the year.
Thank you.
Is that okay, Councillor Westrop? Yeah. Councillor Barry Dobson, I understand you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, thanks, Debbie, for the report. It's good so far. I'm just wondering what happened to 8 between 7 and 9. Is that something that we don't need to know about, or is that just a mistake?
Some of the responsibilities for the KPIs fall to different scrutiny committees, so there isn't always a natural fall that the rural will get all of the KPIs that are within the housing. Some fall to other areas, so you'll note that there's not always a natural progression in the remit of the committees, that it is responsible for all of one area.
Thank you. It's just the only one, that was all. I just have a question on priority number 1, where we said, how many are we looking at when it says work in partnership with the housing market? How many houses are failing at the moment? How many do we need to build per year, I guess?
Andrew, are you able to answer Councillor Dobson's
Yes,
question?
Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Happy to come in. I was just taking my glasses on.
I'm the same. I can't see anyone when I've got my glasses on looking across. Thank
Exactly
you.
the same. I could have my glasses on to see you, or I could see this. So I think that this Councillor Dobson clearly in relation to delivery of housing across the district. There's obviously underlying challenge in terms of delivery of that, and I think we'd in terms of that specific target, which is the delivery of the housing growth within the district. I think I'd seek some advice from the Director of Growth and Culture and the Assistant Director of Planning in terms of what good looks like. I think generally, and it relates to Councillor Westrop's earlier sort of question about performance, is when you're setting a target, we know we're an ambitious target, and we set ambitious council, and we set ambitious targets. And in deciding whether that's green, amber, or red, it's almost the context of each individual target, what that means. So we could be, delivering well in comparison to other authorities, but by our own ambitious target we've set, we've come up short. So happy to provide a more specific answer in terms of what good looks like, Councillor Dobson, but I think that's the sort of context of that PI.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Yeah, it would be interesting.
Thank you, Andrew. Sorry, while you're on the floor, I just want to ask in relation to number 3. It says increase the supply of high quality, sustainable council house. I understand we are moving forward with council houses. If you could make comment, please. Thank you.
Yes, happy to do so. In fact, it's referred to in the comments that we've had the properties completed in Meadow Close, and of course this is last year's performance. We've since moved on. The properties at Trinity Road, which is in Stamford, have completed and have been allocated and signed up. So those are brand new council homes. So that's overall target of 15. It slipped beyond the end of the year, but that has been achieved. And we've also, of course, got in the pipeline for this year a development at Swinegate that's gone through the planning process, and also some flats that we're completing at Riverside within Grantham as well. So we do have, again, clear ambitions in terms of continuing to build new council homes. But what I would ask committee just to bear in mind, for a number of the housing performance indicators that have been set, these were set before last financial year, at a point when the housing service, there was considerable uncertainty in terms of direction of travel, regulatory notice was just in. So as we become more certain following the results of the stock condition survey and our improvement plans become more refined, we're going to be able to set clearer and more, targets that are more connected to our actual performance and ambition. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, very helpful. Thank you, Andrew. Do I have any more questions before? Councillor Knowles?
Thanks very much, Chair. I noticed, first of all, I want to congratulate all the people for a lot of the achievements here, and particularly those in terms of mental health and looking after vulnerable residents and so on, those things. And I believe that we've done extremely well to pick on a lot of those things and to improve the situation substantially in a difficult time, and it's a genuinely difficult time. So congratulations to everybody who's contributed to these successes. The successes are particularly notable where the targets are a little bit subjective, where we have very specific targets and very targets that are numbers, 20 houses, 400 houses, £600,000, whatever. Those are the ones we seem to be missing. And I'm afraid they all tend to be in the housing sort of field. I remember sort of 2 years ago when a different person took over the housing portfolio for the cabinet. At that time, it was acknowledged that the achievement prior to that had not been very good. And there was a very, very straight promise from that person saying, I'm going to see to this, I'm going to see to that, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. We were promised a lot of houses. We were promised a lot of capital spend on new housing, council housing in particular. And by and large, that's not been achieved. They've achieved one building block in Bourne, and that's about it for last year in terms of council houses and building. So those are the areas. I was going to ask the question that's just been asked and ask if Andrew can be a bit more specific and lay for us at the next meeting or financial meeting or whichever, a specific target of what we expect to achieve, I would say over the next 12 months, 2 years and 3 years. We do have a budget goes on for 5 years, sort of idea. And house building shouldn't be an immediate thing necessarily. You can't just do it tomorrow. There's a lot of work needs to go into it. But we should have at this stage very specific targets in terms of house spend and number of houses that we intend to build, both by ourselves and social housing, affordable housing over the next 12 or 18 months. So I would very much like a very specific set of targets for housing and particularly for voids as well, but for housing, so that we can measure very accurately the performance. That's not to say we come here and carp about it. We do recognise that there are substantial problems. We do recognise that the housing had other priorities when it had to report itself to the authorities and all those sorts of things. So I'm not having a carp. It's just that we should have very specific targets about things where numbers are quite clearly available of what we expect. And then we can measure performance against it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Knowles. Do you want to respond, Andrew? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Knowles. In terms of numbers, what gets measured gets done. It's the old saying, isn't it? But it's true. And I think certainly with voids that you touched on, I'll come back to new build, but with voids that you touched on there, we brought to committee a detailed report on voids and void performance at the last meeting. That I think was welcomed, and clearly we've set very specific targets there in relation to the turnaround time for void properties. In terms of new build and new build plans, I think that as us moving back and dealing with our regulatory notice, that has been the absolute key focus for the whole service, quite rightly, because there was significant risks we were carrying as a landlord that were, unacceptable to us as a council. I think we have moved, and we'll talk about the regulatory update, later in the meeting, but we have moved to a point where increasingly we're taking that forward-thinking view rather than, the reactive position that we were in. And that links with us doing the stock condition survey, doing the survey of all our tenants and pieces of work that have been completed. And that feeds into us reviewing and producing our HRA business plan, which we will do in this financial year. And I've spoken to Chairman and Deputy Chairman about a joint scrutiny approach with the Finance Committee to look at the HRA business plan, to come up with those detailed sort of targets and figures that you're talking about, Councillor Knowles. So it is still work in progress, and it's approach, I think, that needs to be sort of characterised by we measure twice and we cut once. We want to do an HRA business plan that members can really sign up to and endorse, and that officers can deliver. We could do a quick plan, or we could do a really thorough good plan that that's achievable, ambitious but achievable. particularly at the moment when we've got uncertainty in terms of cost inflation and issues of that nature, particularly in the building industry. We want to produce absolutely specific figures that we deliver to and make sure that we've got these sites in the pipeline. And I'm optimistic that we do have a number of development sites, but we have to balance our spend and activity in that area with what we do with our existing stock, and of course the capital improvements that we want to see to our existing homes, our tenants' homes. And we'll probably get to that in a little bit with the paper on fuel poverty. So yes, numbers are coming, and absolutely scrutiny will be at the heart of that decision-making process. I hope that's helpful.
Are you happy with that? Thank you. Right, if there's no more questions, I'd like to move on to item 7, which is the housing allocation policy. So if you can refer to pages 3 to 86 of your agenda supplement pack. I think you probably noticed on the last bit of paperwork, you've got 2 numbers, but it is a number at the bottom that we're referring to. So, the purpose of this is to bring the committee's attention to that we note the content of the report, the proposed allocation policy, consultation. Oh, sorry, I'm moving on a bit quick.
Oh, no.
Calm down. Sorry, Debbie, you need to finish. Yeah, there's more items to go through, isn't there, within item 6, the corporate plan key performance. Is there anything else that you want to add to what you've gone through? Sorry, I was racing ahead.
No, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to add, Andrew, Craig? Okay, that's fine then. I wasn't racing ahead too much. I'm allowed to make a mistake. It's my first one, so I apologise. Well, in my mind anyway. So, rewind, going back to item 7 is the housing allocation policy. So if we refer to 3 to 86 of your agenda supplement pack, so we've got 2 packs at the moment. So I need to bring your attention that we note the content of the report, the proposed allocations policy, consultation responses and equality impact assessment, provides comment and feedback on the allocations policy and choice-based lettings, support submissions of the allocation policy for Cabinet's consideration and approval. I understand our Director of Housing, Andrew Cotton, is going to give us a presentation. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So, yes, this report and a draft allocation policy, really pleased to bring this to committee today. I apologise that it had to come out as a supplementary paper. But it is there is a large bundle of papers. We have touched on the allocation policy at committee a number of times since I've been coming in. Sort of 12 months, just over 12 months. I've been at South Kesteven, and I think that we have decided to give this absolute priority in terms of our homelessness and housing option functions for a number of reasons. The first was that the existing policy itself was, although adopted in 2019, wasn't really up to date in terms of legislation, and particularly in relation to domestic abuse and the Homelessness Reduction Act of 2017. The second part relating to the existing policy was it was difficult to follow. In part, some of it were contradictory, particularly in terms of property eligibility, so the number of bedrooms that a household was eligible for. It also produced some effects that were almost sort of counterintuitive, where there would be, in terms of affordability, there was no real balance of housing needs against people's ability to meet that housing need in the private rented sector, for example. And there was also, in terms of the sort of delivery mechanism of the allocation policy, was still on the basis of a housing register. And the council, when a property becomes vacant, either in our own stock or a registered social landlord, we run a list and then we see who's top of the list and then we write to them. And then they refuse it and we go to the next person, etc. So that's very much a traditional approach that's been really sort of superseded by a choice-based lettings approach. So we've undertaken workshops with councillors, with the elected members, where we went through some of the issues, talked about some case studies. We captured the feedback from those workshops. We've consulted with registered social landlords and other agencies that work within the district. There's a full equality impact assessment being done. We've taken that and refreshed and revised the allocation policy, made it simpler, reduced the number of bands for those in housing need from what was 7 down to 4. We've clarified the property eligibility, so the size of a property that a household is eligible for has been simplified. And we're also joining that together with a proposal to move to a choice-based letting system, which is where a property, when it becomes vacant, is advertised, and applicants who are on the housing register can bid for it. So they're expressing a real interest and desire to live in that property rather than sitting back passively waiting to see what happens. And I think taking those two things together, we get an awful lot of inquiries from members who are in turn contacted by their constituents to say, I don't know what's happening with my housing application, or I don't understand where I am on the waiting list, how long I'll have to wait. This property seems to be empty, but I don't know what's happening with it. In one stroke, we should be able to assist in dealing with those inquiries straight away, because the transparency of the move to a choice-based letting system where properties are advertised. So if it's there, you can bid for it, you can see what number you are, whether you're 3rd or 4th or 5th or top or 28th. It's all about that transparency and that openness as well. So clearly there's quite a lot of detail in terms of it being a policy. We have appended the full consultation responses as well, including the ones from members and the public consultation exercise that was run. And I hope that we get the support of committee, but very happy to answer questions or to take forward any proposed amendments that committee may recommend.
Thank you, Andrew. If I can take questions, please, from committee members. Councillor Philip Knowles, thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. Sorry to keep coming on with this. I've got a few comments. First of all, I received this on Tuesday night. I came during the day Tuesday. I think Councillor Dobson the same. I got it Tuesday and first look at it about 11 o'clock Tuesday night when I came back from a meeting. I've had one day to look at it. And if we're going to do justice to scrutiny of any description, to get sort of 24 hours to look at 83 pages and try and make a valid and full contribution to debate on it, I think is asking a bit much of us. I know you're busy and I know it's difficult, but really that's insufficient. I have been through as best I can. The new concept, obviously, choice brand lettings is a complete change from the old system. I have one or two concerns. I recognise the benefits. I can read the benefits, and I recognise that there are some there. I have one or two concerns. Is that some people will find it difficulty getting into the system because it is a computer-based system. It doesn't fit well with people who are not familiar with working a computer, where you go onto a system and you try and find something that suits you and you finally get that. I think that could be a difficulty for some people. And I want to know really how we manage to keep in contact with those people who are not as familiar as they may be with computer systems, like me. I'd never get on the system because, with my inadequacy with the computer, that would be a problem. One or two things also, something about the financial things. Richard Wiles has made a comment about financials, but it seems to miss out something that's on the previous page or the next page, is that the system, the choice letting system, it says will probably increase void lengths and increase void rent losses. Because people will have a look at it and then have a chat about it and so on, and then turn it down, it'll go on to the next person. Whereas in the old system, people were perhaps put there rather than, allowed to make a choice. And I'd like to think that amongst the financial considerations that we do consider the fact that we're already not very good at voids, but if void lettings are to go, the void shortage of letting revenue because of voids is going to go worse. We ought to take that into consideration as well and monitor that extremely closely, because that could be very difficult. The other thing is I welcome is the greater communication that's implied in this, that's communication along the line with people who are on the market, as it were, for the letting system. I have a particular case, which I'm going to take up with them later because it's not the business of this particular committee, where communication, I think, has been less than satisfactory. And there's a particular person very, very anxious out there and very, very concerned, and communication seems to have been very poor with them. So I do welcome the idea that the communication, the two-way communication, is much improved by this. I can't comment on all. What I've read, it seems okay. I've been quite pleased with most of what I've read. I think the policy seems sound and the processes, as best I can read them, seem sound. But I would add just one or two words of caution that I've already mentioned. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Knowles. Just on the getting the papers on Tuesday, I'm not sure when it was actually online. I didn't look at it online, but perhaps that's something we can improve. I agree with you. I mean, I'd got my head buried in the papers yesterday, so I appreciate that. But I also appreciate, obviously, the housing department extremely busy. But if we can improve that, maybe I know you probably not everyone's for going online. They prefer the hard copy, but perhaps going forward, one way or the other, we can just improve when we've got a lot of papers to read. Are you aware when it went online? I read my papers. You know.
I'm looking at Amy. I think it would have been the Monday.
Yeah, I mean, it is an alternative. It's not everyone's cup of tea to read this sort of thing in depth on their laptop, etc. But yeah, no, I appreciate your comment and thank you for raising it, Councillor Knowles. Yeah, I think I'm going to go to Craig just about the computer side of it and the system, etc. I know I'm looking at Appendix 379. I know it's slightly going away from what Councillor Knowles, but it's I just wanted to, I didn't know if you wanted to give me a bit of information about the allocations policy timeline of implementation. Or is that putting you on the spot?
No, not at all, Madam Chair. I mean, realistically, if we get the allocations policy adopted, we do need to implement a new computer system, which will be the choice-based letting system. So we need to procure that. We've tested the market. We've already had assurances that if we complete that procurement exercise August, September, we'll be able to go live with the system in time for the end of this year. The only thing that I would just come back to Councillor Knowles on is in regard to the cost and the impact on voids. The current system impacts our voids in a much more timely manner than the new system would, whereby we get a lot more or higher number of refusals because we're making the choice of who has that property from the housing register rather than the incoming tenant having the choice. If somebody expresses a choice to take on a property, they're probably going to be far more inclined to actually sign up to that property rather than just giving them an offer from our register, and then they then obviously then decline that offer because they don't believe that the property is suitable. So I'm hoping that it will have the reverse effect on our void times and actually help us to continue to improve that. But yeah, the system. There are numerous systems out there that will allow us to undertake choice-based lettings. We've had a number of conversations with a number of suppliers to look at the market, and we'll go out and do a procurement exercise in due course. But that will be awarded from a framework, so it will be quite a quick turnaround. But obviously, the implementation of that would be alongside the current implementation of our housing management system as well.
Councillor Knowles.
Just a point of information. My comments on voids are taken from Jodie's report. Item 111, the current approach can result in a higher number of refusals as the customer may not agree that the property offered is in line with their need, resulting in refusals and a potential higher level of void rent loss whilst the tenant cannot be sourced. So I'm not making this up. I was taking your report saying that there would be a higher rent loss. Or could well be
That's making reference to the current situation, Councillor, and that's saying that our current allocation process impacts and provides us with a higher rent loss, or a higher potential rent loss, because we have those refusals at points of ready to let.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor, I was just referring me.
111 on page 6. At the bottom, choice-based settings. 111.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon. Current approach to something I beg your pardon.
Okay. Thank you, Craig. I believe Councillor Dobson, you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, just quickly, and this is referring back to the papers before that Debbie produced as well. I believe that with voids, I noticed we've got a 90-day time frame between vacation and new occupancy. Is there any way, because we've talked about heating before amongst ourselves, and I guess that we're changing all that as well, which I can imagine does take a long time. But is there any way we can shorten that and get those houses back on the market?
Yeah, at the last overview and scrutiny, we brought quite a comprehensive voids policy and a voids update. Last year's performance was just over 83 days. I'm pleased to announce that as of today, we're sitting at 59.02 days for this financial year since the 1st of April. We have a massive focus as a director on turning voids around and reducing that void rent loss. We have a weekly meeting where we have all stakeholders and all partners from across the directorate in discussing each one of our voids with a view to turning them around as quickly as possible. We obviously have had the positive impact of the new properties that have come in this year, and we do have some supply chain issues where we're looking at doing major works in properties, whether that be from our subcontractors or whether that be from the supply chain for things like kitchens or for heating systems. With regards to kind of like heating system changes, where we're doing like the green homes grants and things like that, we do tend to do those when the tenants are in situ, unless it's flagged up during the void process, which can prolong that. But as long as we have early warning of that property coming in, we can get advance notice to the contractors and coordinate that work in a more timely manner.
Thanks, Craig. Do we have a notice when people vacate, or do we suddenly get told that we're leaving?
No, we have a 4-week notice period. So as a part of the voids process and the voids weekly meeting, we discuss each one of those properties as well, because on some occasions we will get the keys back within that notice period. So that gives us some free time. Only last week we let 2 properties within the first week of them being available to let post the exhaustion of that 4-week period. We've got 3 in progress at present, which we're hoping to turn around within that 4-week period, ultimately giving us a 0-day void period. So again, it's a part and parcel of looking at all of the properties we've got either on notice, upcoming, or within the void process, and making sure that we take advantage of those quick wins. But it's also looking at balancing the needs of our tenants or our residents that are in need of the property. So we're also matching and making sure that we're looking after our homeless and people that are in our temporary accommodation units as well, and utilising the stock to its best advantage.
Yeah, I have a question referring to page 50. It's 42 on the side, bungalows. Well, it's not a question really, it's an observation. Either. I really welcome this. It's basically 7.61. It said general need bungalows, not shelter accommodation, offering no adaptations, have a minimum age preference of 60 years of age applied in the first instance. Such properties will be allocated in the following order: A, households over 60 years of age with the ground floor need; B, households of any age with the ground floor need; households over 60 without a ground floor need. To me, that really makes sense, and I completely welcome that, because I think I've harped on in the past in previous meetings. It just seems to be, you have your pensioner bungalows, and very often it doesn't make it wrong, but I think, you know, there are people who do want to stay in bungalows in village, from my personal point of view, in rural villages, etc., and also in the towns, and they can't always, you know, get a bungalow, whereas now they're going to get priority for their needs. So I just wondered if you wanted to, you know, make any comment on that. I think that's really good, a good thing.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Trotter. So I absolutely, and that is some of the sort of feedback we've had from members right across the board, is in terms of previous approaches to lettings and suitability and making sure we've got a sustainable community. I think the worst thing for us as a landlord who also has the responsibility for allocations in social housing right across the district, so registered social landlords of all types, but that includes us. The worst thing for us is where we let a property, you know, we do all the void work, we let it, and then the tenancy fails for whatever reason, you know, but it could be, or very often it's because of that lack of sort of a long-term thinking about what's a sustainable neighbourhood. You know, and the creating tensions within the community because of an unsuitable allocation or a short-sighted allocation, however well-meaning, you know, just creates us further problems, both, you know, within the community, but also for us as a landlord in terms of then managing that. And perhaps we get another void because the tenancy fails, so we have to re-let the property again. And that's really what the whole thrust of this policy and choice-based lettings is about, so that we're, you know, when a property becomes vacant, we do the void works and we let it once, and then that's sustainable. And then as a landlord, we don't need to revisit that. You know, that tenancy works. You know, that has to have, you know, it makes sense from a business point of view, but also from a social point of view as well, doesn't it? I just think in addition, it links back to, I think, Councillor Knowles' sort of first question or comment was about it's all on a system, it's all on IT, how are people going to deal with that? And yes, it is. It's very much about that transparency of stuff being on the web and people can log in. But that's, you know, we're not going to leave people behind in doing that. And all the choice-based systems I've been involved in, you know, there is that human element to it as well for people that don't have access to the internet, or that have language barriers or you know, issues with literacy, where you have that human side of it and that contact with the housing options team, who will work with that individual and make sure that their application is up to date. And then that option, because it is a system, of setting that system to auto bid on the behalf of the applicant. So it doesn't matter if they can't log in that week, or they miss an application. If it suits the criteria they have set, if it's that 2-bedroom bungalow in Pickworth, with an adaptation, the system will pick up on that and bid on that applicant's behalf. So it's really supportive for people who otherwise would be sitting at home wondering when they're going to get an offer. They know at least the system is doing it for them.
Yeah, that's really positive. Thank you. Just a query. What if we have a bungalow, let's say in a location that no one fitting this criteria wants to live? How does that work? Thank you.
The great advantage of a choice-based lettings is you're advertising them. So it could be that someone hasn't considered that area, but they will see it on the adverts that are run online. You know, they've got the opportunity to look at all the properties that come in available across the district, and perhaps they hadn't, you know, they are eligible because they meet the age criteria, but they hadn't thought about that area. And then when they do, they suddenly think, oh yeah, yes, you know, I'll make a bid. And again, that's changing it from the current approach, rather than officers having to think and try and make connections off different matching lists, or managing people's expectations. The customer has that active role about actively thinking, yes, I would like to live there, rather than, oh, they've offered it, I suppose I'll have to take it. So it's all about that choice.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Dixon Warren, you have question.
Thank you, Chair. I was reassured when I read about choice-based letting in the draft proposal. I can't say that I have read the entire paper in full detail and understand all of it, but I read that and I thought this is good. And this discussion has only reassured me. I have very limited experience of casework in the council at the moment because I've not been around for very long. But I very much hope that the move to this sort of system will prevent some of the constituents' problems that I have had to deal with from happening in future, or at least reduce the possibility of the problems that I am currently on and off trying to help deal with. The second point I'd like to make as a veteran is how pleased I am to see armed forces personnel included in the policy, and that they're being given, the priority that the system requires. And if I might, as a third and final point, I think Councillor Knowles is absolutely right. We haven't had time to read this in full detail, but I wonder, from what I've read, I'm certainly supportive of this, and I wonder if we were to vote to adopt it, whether we might have an opportunity in, I don't know, 3 to 6 months' time to return to any issues that we subsequently identify on more deliberate and detailed reading, whether there would be a possibility to retrospectively amend certain aspects of the policy. I'm too new to know whether that's possible, but I'd like to float the idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I don't know. Andrew's looking at me. I think he'll come back and answer you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, just to repeat, in terms of the reasonable comments made by committee in terms of the turnaround of the papers, to repeat my apologies for that, in terms of the bundle that we've ended up producing. I think that certainly, as a scrutiny committee, assuming you would be supportive of the policy at the moment, it would fit really well on the work programme to look at, post implementation, what it looks like, and even, sort of 6 months after that, or 12 months after that, maybe to get a regular annual report in terms of allocations in the previous financial year, something like that, to see how that compares with the demographic of the district. What allocations have been done through the armed forces route, etc. More than happy to to support committee with that. I think that would be really appropriate. I think that in terms of the recommendation that will go to cabinet, I would usually put a sort of a recommendation on for cabinet to delegate to me as director in consultation with the portfolio holder to make any minor amendments anyway, and that would usually be in response to legislation or changes in regulation that we've got no option anyway. So thinking of the Armed Force Covenant being sort of finalised, that we're expecting sort of September, it would be odd if we took one and then had to take it back again in the October, for example. So more than happy, of course, as always, if any members have any questions or comments post committee to respond to those as well, of course.
Thank you, Andrew. Is that okay for you, Councillor Dixon Warren?
Yes, perfect.
I think it is. It's very positive, and we do think about things sometimes when we've finished our meetings or going forward, we get good ideas. What I will mention is, and I haven't actually been yet, we do have member workshops, don't we, Andrew, where we can raise any issues, concerns, and then hopefully going forward, within housing, it makes it better for our residents, or we improve on failures, etc. I didn't know, sorry Andrew, I know you've just spoken, but did you want to make any comment about these workshops? Because obviously we've got new members, particularly Richard, who's touched on these, he's been approached by residents with housing issues.
Yes, we do. I guess there's a couple of things to flag up. We do regular all member briefings in terms of the housing service and progress, and of course scrutiny gets quite a lot of detail, but that's more across the board where we talk to all members about what's going on. There's also a member working party, and those meetings are chaired by Councillor Reid as portfolio holder, and there's sort of cross-party representation, north, south, east and west of the district, and that's very much sort of eyes and ears on the ground, giving some immediate sort of feedback or suggestions or comments or service failures and complaints and lessons learnt. And that's supported by the assistant director and the head of housing. And that also links in with our housing inquiry email service, if I put it like that. So that's our central sort of email box or contact box where our service improvement officers support members with their inquiries that come in and supporting them with, making sure a response gets back to them with constituent inquiries, because certainly I think in housing we get our fair share, and I think members get their fair share too.
Yeah, Richard.
Sorry, it's just a final comment. I forgot to mention how very valuable the presentation on the draft policy was in April, because I think it helped to prepare the ground for the arrival of the draft policy. I still haven't read it all in detail, but that presentation was invaluable at the time in preparing for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. And what I will do, obviously, Councillor, the portfolio holder for housing isn't unable to be present today. Possibly we can, the workshop will be my first workshop, so maybe it's something that he can outline what we try to achieve, etc., and include yourself and anyone else who would like to know. I know he's touched on it in the previous meeting, hasn't he? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions? Oh, sorry, Hilary. Councillor Whitten. Have you? Sorry, we thought that Councillor Whitten. No, Hilary, you put your hand up. Thank you.
Chair. This is maybe the most stupid question in England, but I'll ask it anyway. Is there any way of dealing with the private sector? For instance, I happen to have a house that I bought a long time ago, not in this area, that is a buy-to-let, and I live 100 miles away and have to try and service it. Is there any way that that could be then put into the council and said, look, this is for let, however many years, and deal more with the private sector who actually have properties as a one house owner rather than the corporate businesses?
I can see Andrew can answer your question, Hilary.
Yeah, not a silly question at all. I've heard a lot sillier. I think that in terms of the private rented sector, we do work with the private rented sector, and a lot of councils do. I think it's actually the other way around. It's to be honest, the silliness is the private rented sector don't approach us more often. Because we can help, but there's often a reluctance from private landlords in terms of their perception of what people on our housing register will be like as tenants. And that has really changed. We have a lot of people on our housing register who are in work. They may be lower paid, but they're in work or part-time work, and they are facing eviction from the private rented sector. Through no fault of their own sort of eviction. So yeah, we would welcome private landlords approaching us and asking us, to make those connections. So yeah, not silly at all. I wish it happened more often.
Thank you. Is it something that could be promoted? Because I didn't know that.
Yeah, we do have those relationships with the private rented sector in South Kesteven. There's some that we work with very closely. I think that the traditional route for a private rented sector landlord is to engage with a letting agent, who in effect will source their own potential tenants. But yes, we do have a number of landlords that are happy to work with us, and of course we support with deposit schemes as well, that can really sort of tie those two things together.
Thank you, Andrew. I hope that helps, Hilary. Thank you. I'll take one more comment from Councillor Dobson, and then I think we'll go to the vote. Thank you.
Actually, it is not a comment. I'd just like to thank Jodie actually for the presentation of this, because it is a huge document. I know we all complained that we didn't get it until Tuesday, and I was one, but it's a huge document. So, you know, it has nothing, doesn't reflect on you, Jodie, that we got it late, because that's an awful lot to produce.
Yeah, I echo that comment. You know, obviously for us as councillors, we like plenty of time to read through everything, particular paperwork like this, but we always appreciate all the hard work and time that goes into these reports. So thank you. Okay, so I now will move on. Could I have a proposer, please, for the new housing allocation policy? Councillor Richard Dixon-Warren, and a seconder, please. I'll take Councillor Ray Wotton, thank you. So if I move to the votes, can I have a show of hands, all in favour, please? Looks like it's unanimous, so that will go forward, thank you. Oh, sorry, Andrew.
I just think, Madam Chairman, that in terms of the discussion, maybe that's we'd like to add on to it that for a report to come back to this committee in 6 months' time.
Yes, definitely, Andrew. Thank you for raising that. And Amy's nodding her head, so we'll make sure that that's done and included in the work plan going forward. Thank you. Thank you for, as I say, thank you for all the work in this report, and also thank you committee members for all your questions. So we'll move on to items 8, which is compliance update. This is pages 41 to 58 on your main agenda pack. And it's the recommendation is that the committee notes the latest compliance position following the ongoing meetings with the regulator of social housing, that the committee receives a further update report at its next scheduled meeting. As you may be aware, particularly for committee members who've been coming to these meetings for a while, this is an ongoing update, but I'll now hand over, I believe, to Andrew, if it can give us a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So yeah, clearly a fairly standard report now that we bring to committee regularly, and we have done during the period of the regulatory notice. The last update was of course in April. Members will note from the report a few key points. Section 1.6 and 1.8 refer to the two pieces of work that we've already touched on in the meeting, the full tenant consultation exercise that's concluded, which we've badged up as the big listen. As we've said, very good response rate to that from the council's tenants and leaseholders. Gives us really a good handle in terms of what tenants would like to see the council do in relation to the homes that they live in. There's the second part that's covered there in 1.8 is the stock condition survey, which the stock condition information we held was very out of date. So we've basically completed in 12 months a full stock condition survey. Those that we didn't get access to for whatever reason are in the first batch of properties that we'll survey regularly year on year from now on, to make sure that we always have an up-to-date information on our stock condition survey. And we will, those two pieces of work will feed together with all the financial figures, of course, will feed into our HRA business plans as we develop them over the course of this year. And we've already mentioned that sort of joint scrutiny approach. Over the page of the report at section 1.9, we touch on the tenant feedback survey. So that's rant and rave. I know committee were really keen on seeing that go live. It has gone live, and we continue to see really good performance feedback from tenants on a sort of daily basis. We touched there on that second page of the report as well in terms of the audit review process. And as mentioned there at the bottom of paragraph 1.10 about the next stage, one of the stages for us coming out of regulatory notice to be engaging with an external audit and looking at that later in this year. We have had and we continue to meet monthly with the regulator, and the last meeting was the 13th of June, which was before this was written, but obviously it's happened now. Again, positive meeting, positive feedback in terms of the progress that we're making and continue to make. The papers attached and appended to this report are the papers that go to the regulator. So there's absolutely transparency in terms of what we're reporting. And I'm sure committee will recall that in April's meeting, we talked about some of the fluctuations in our performance in relation to those key landlord health and safety areas. And there's some detail there provided from section 1.12. We'll see a far more positive position now. Those baseline figures have really been interrogated to our satisfaction, and we're really confident in terms of the figures that we've got in the system. We've moved over into 3 ambers and 3 green. In terms of asbestos, we're showing 100% compliance. Some reassurance for committee in terms of fire risk assessments. All blocks assist as higher risk have been inspected and corrective actions underway. It's some measure, I'm Chairman, of the progress we've made, actually, that you can see 99.96 gas servicing achieved in May, and we're a little disappointed because that moved down from 100% the month before. So, you know, we'd have really taken 99.96, previously, but it does show that we've hit 100% in terms of gas safety. So that shows that our processes are working really, really well. And we continue to engage with tenants that are, for whatever reason, refusing us access. We can see with water hygiene, so Legionella, we're expecting 100% compliance in this month, and we're on track for that. And of course, lift inspections, we're sustaining 100%. Hopefully that gives a flavour of the key points for committee, Madam Chairman. Of course, happy to take any questions and look forward to any comments.
Thank you, Andrew. Do you have any questions from committee members?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Knowles.
Councillor Knowles.
I feel like Ashley. Sorry. The survey that you did, I'm interested in that. About 25% of people are generally dissatisfied with one thing or another. I think a lot of people are dissatisfied, whatever happens, you know, they have a natural thing to say, I wasn't happy with that. What sort of expectation have you to say that this is pretty good? Is it 75, 80%? Given that some people will always be dissatisfied, what sort of expectation would you think was pretty good as a satisfaction survey?
Yeah, it's a good question, and you know, absolutely, it's pleasing all of the people all of the time, isn't it? It's the 100%. I think typically within the sector, and we do use Housemark with the sector sort of experts, if you like. They do the benchmarking services. They're part owned by the Chartered Institute of Housing. Really, really good quality work that they do. You're looking really getting up there towards 85% satisfaction. That starts to get you in the top quartile of performance. I think it's interesting as well as you look at the different ways in which we can measure performance. Clearly, void turnaround being one, but also satisfaction with the new home that we're picking up through Rant and Rave, and then sort of general satisfaction like this survey. I think that there's there's a range, and some of it people will carry forward their sort of historic experience rather than the most recent experience, whether that was good or bad. So there's always a story behind it, isn't there? But if you get into that 85, 90%, I think you're amongst the top performing landlords.
Thank you. Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, just to a comment or two questions, actually, I suppose. 1.12.2, where we get the electrical testing at 86.58%. Does that mean that we've only tested that number of dwellings, or that has come back being that those are you're compliant?
Yeah, thank you for the question. That basically means that we don't have a valid current certificate. That's not to say that we haven't done electrical testing historically. It just means that we haven't revisited that property within that 5-year timescale. So again, if we look at best practice and kind of sector best practice, Housemark generally says that the upper quartile performance is above 85%. So again, we are kind of approaching that. You'll always have around about 5 to 10% of your properties are generally quite hard to access one way or another. We've seen that through the gas process, but we're also seeing it through this process too. So again, it's just about making sure that we've got the due process to work with technical services and tenancy services to gain that access, and that's something that we're doing in a more proactive manner now.
Thanks, Craig. And the second question was on Legionella. Now, I know absolutely nothing about how we test this, but it's I know we're looking to likely achievement of 100% in June 2022, which is now. But how do we tell? Are these dead legs in the system or things like this where that's likely to occur?
Yeah, I'll come back on that one as well if that's okay. Generally, they are kind of dead legs or kind of water taps in communal areas. Where you don't have that frequency of use. So we go around there, we have a flushing regime on those, and where possible, we'll remove those. All of our properties, void works, we make sure that we're examining to make sure we remove kind of historic water tanks that are in lofts or any kind of potential dead legs within kind of kitchens and bathrooms. So it's something we're always aware of, but the Legionella percentages on there are generally based around communal areas and communal water kind of outlets.
Craig, are we on 100%?
We are indeed. We're on 100% now, which will be kept up until November, which is when we start re-surveying again from that point in time. So we're at 100% now until November. That's not to say that we won't. Because we're always looking at opportunities and we're making sure that if we come across anything we weren't aware of previously, we'll add that. So that's not to say that we won't find another one somewhere within kind of like a more intensive property survey or something like that we then add, and we have to have another water hygiene kind of survey and an action plan for that. But all the ones that we're aware of and that we have registered at present, yeah, they're all audited and they're all compliant until November of this year.
Thank you, Craig. Do I have any other questions? That's great. Thank you, Craig. So with no other questions, and it was for sort of noting only, can I move now, please, to item 9, which is the fuel poverty update. And if you want to refer to pages 87 to 100 on your agenda supplement, this notes the position and current projects ongoing to address this issue, supports the council seeking any further additional funding streams and grants to help address the matter. I understand that Craig will be answering questions, but we've also got Serena Brown, who's here also, and she's obviously our scheme and substantial and climate change officer. So yeah, if we have any questions related to that area, then please feel free. I'm sure Serena will answer. Thank you, Craig.
No problem. Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so basically, I suppose not everybody in the room is aware of the pressures around with regards to kind of fuel prices and inflation. Obviously, a lot of these data sets were from 2019-20 from government data sets, so they don't take into account the current pressures that everybody's experiencing. I suppose realistically, key to our corporate plan, we have the corporate plan ambitions to deliver a clean and sustainable environment and to deliver housing that meets the needs of all of our residents. All of the data that we have available to us kind of at that, like national data is more regional data. So you can see there in 1.2 that the total proportion of fuel poor households in the East Midlands is 9.2% compared with the highest in the North West at 14.7%, and the lowest in the northeast at 5.5. It goes on there to kind of outline how fuel poverty is kind of addressed, or how it's kind of quantified around the energy efficiency of a property, the income level of the household, and obviously the energy prices, and offsetting that and looking at how much disposable income is available to the household after all of those costs are taken into account. The overall level of fuel poverty in England is in 2020 is 13.2%, and that was 3.16 million households. So I think if you look at the tremendous hikes that we've seen in energy prices since then, I'm sure that we're probably far in excess of that number. So you know, it's a growing pressure and a growing kind of concern to all of us, most particularly kind of us as a social landlord with such a large stock. Obviously, the ways that we can affect that from a registered provider or from a council's point of view is to help our private owners and occupiers to access funding and grant funding that's available for them to enhance their properties, but also to take advantage of national funding pots to deliver energy efficiency projects to our own stock. So obviously we have two projects that are ongoing at present. We've got the Green Homes Local Authority delivery phase 2, LAD 2, kind of touched upon a little bit already within the performance indicators. So we were awarded £926,000 worth of match funding through that one, or grant funding through that one. We've just recently gone live with the Sustainable Warmth Fund, which is an overall pot of just over £1.3 million from the government. We're delivering that in partnership across Lincolnshire, so to ensure that we've got better economies of scale with contractors and with kind of the reach, and not having to reinvent all of the advertising materials and everything. We did that on kind of more of a regional Lincolnshire-wide area. And then thirdly, we've got a new boiler upgrade scheme, which is just in the process of being kind of rolled out again. That is for owner-occupied and income bracketed households, and also to private landlords. So some of the progress on delivery around those, the Green Homes Local Authority, the LAD 2, we've so far completed just over 150 properties, which is 95% of the original, I believe, 172 properties. And that was to basically enhance our EPC, which is obviously the energy rating of our properties, up by at least a single band increase, which doesn't sound a great deal, but when you're dealing with some of the properties that we have with the old construction methods, that's quite a significant saving for a family. The properties that we've delivered on, we've delivered a raft of measures. It's not always just about the heating systems. It can be, you know, we can have more of a whole house approach, where you can look at the external wall insulation, cavity wall insulation, loft insulation, accompanying that with solar PV or PVT to provide free hot water. So it's not just about one solution into a property, but it's about a raft of measures. Obviously, with your older properties, a lot of airtight problems as well, where you've got kind of air leakage coming in and cooling the properties down. So that's kind of the LAD 2. We have had some kind of delivery issues with that, particularly related to supply chain and contractor issues. I'm sure some of the members in the room are aware of some of the issues that we've had. I think that we have had some really, really good positive outcomes on that. I'm aware that a couple of the members have visited some properties and seen some of our air source heat pumps that have been installed as part of that programme. The Sustainable Warmth Fund, this initiative was only launched in April/May of this year. We're looking to basically undertake measures and improvements to about 60 properties across the South Stephen area, and with 10% of those also being council-owned properties. So the press release for the Home Energy Upgrade Scheme is attached as Appendix 1. And then finally, the Boiler Upgrade Scheme is, again, a government grant to encourage property owners to install low-carbon heating systems. The scheme is open to domestic and small non-domestic properties in England, and it runs from 2022 to 2025. And you can see there that owner-occupiers and private landlords can get anything up to £6,000 off the installation of a ground source heat pump, or £5,000 for an air source or biomass boiler. I suppose that's pretty much the gist of it, other than just basically kind of trying to put some support behind us, looking to exploit and explore every opportunity that opens its way to us to bid for additional funding to continue to enhance the properties that we own and manage. We've got a recent future opportunity that we've just identified in the past 7 days, which is the second wave of the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund from BICE. So we're actively looking at that and exploring that as we speak since this report's been written. So I'd welcome any questions.
Thank you, Craig. I'll move to Serena. Do you want to add to Craig's presentation? Because obviously, you know, it's your specialist area. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. That was very comprehensive from Craig. Just to say, you know, we've got a number of schemes currently on offer. The Home Energy Upgrade Grant is a new scheme, so we haven't even done the marketing for that. Late May, early June. So we're still waiting for a lot of the assessments to come forward for that. As I'll say with any of these schemes, it's a massive demand that we have. There's a great need to retrofit a lot of the UK's housing stock. And we're only able to complete a modest number of properties with the funding that we have. So it's good that we have this funding, but it's a very large challenge that we and every council has to take this on. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Serena. Do I have any questions from committee members? Councillor Dixon-Warren, thank you.
I have just one, and it's probably not going to be a very clever question, but there seems to be a glaring omission from the list of potential sources, and that is solar. Why is solar not on the list? Thank you.
No, good question. And I was probably going to answer it. Thanks, Craig.
As part of the work that we've been doing under the LAD 2, some of those installations have included solar. Sorry, I probably referred to it as PV within the paper, so that's probably why it's clouded that. So I apologise for that and kind of that confusion. Generally speaking, you class solar in 2 categories. So you either have solar PV, which is your photovoltaic, which provides you with electricity into the property, or you have your PVT, which is your systems which basically provide you with hot water from the sun directly into the property. So we have done a mixture of both of those across LAD 2. Unfortunately, they don't have the same impact in raising the EPC of a property from a cost benefit point of view. So you tend to be more it's more cost effective to look at extra insulation or external wall insulation to kind of wrap around the property rather than to actually supplement the hot water, because obviously, generally speaking, the biggest benefit you get from solar PVT is when it's a hot day, and there probably isn't maybe the cause for as much hot water or the strain on energy costs as there are during the winter when we don't have the sun shining so much, if that kind of makes sense. It still helps, but it doesn't have that overall impact that we probably need to bring the properties up by a full step on the EPC.
I'm grateful for the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee members? No. Just a quick question. Obviously, like you referred to, Craig, I've seen these new heat pumps that have been installed. I'm not actually aware. How long does it take from start to finish to install? Thank you.
Yep, it generally differs between an installation. So, for example, if you're replacing an existing oil-fired system, which is a wet system, so a radiated system already, and they're in a serviceable condition, it can be anything between 2 to 5 days maximum, because all you need to do is basically kind of replace the boiler with the air source heat pump unit. Where it becomes a little bit more tricky is where, for example, if you're replacing a storage heating unit or electrical heating with a wet system, you then have to obviously put all the pipework through the buildings and everything as well. So that can be anything up to probably 2 to 3 weeks maximum. It also, again, depends on the design of the property as well. Bungalows are far easier than obviously a 2-story property. But we've, I think one of the main considerations with air source heat pumps is we have to look for a external wall that doesn't come onto in a habitable space within the property, or a habited room, so no bedrooms or a living room. And that's where we have some difficulty with some of our stock, because obviously maybe they're not the biggest properties. So we have to look for kind of alternative opportunities around where we can site those units, and that can sometimes be the most problematic because they can't be too far away from the building either. But obviously with the air source heat pump, you have the fans running and the compressors running, and they can cause some vibration. And also obviously some of our most needy properties aren't traditionally constructed either. So if you have some of your kind of tempered steel and concrete buildings, and you put something onto those, the air source heat pumps can actually create vibration noise throughout the whole of the property. So there's been a lot of learning and understanding from our point of view, a lot of challenge going back to the contractor where we've maybe gone back and inspected works and we've asked them to rectify them. And I think also from the supply chain sector, there's probably quite a bit of learning still to be done out there as well. And obviously we've also had some impacts with regards to delivery of the assets, because there's such a call on them globally that I think when everybody was bidding for the funding, there was probably a plethora of air source heat pumps sat at suppliers, but those were soon hoovered up quite quickly. So we've had some delays on those as well. But where we have the materials available, it tends to be anything between 1 to 3 weeks installation.
Thank you, Craig. I mean, can we be assured that none of our residents going through the winter are going to be in a cold house? You know, obviously things go wrong, but as far as putting these heat pumps in and having heating, are we on target to have them done before the winter months and cold weather creeps in? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, with the LAD 2 funding, the deadlines have been extended for completion until the 31st of August. So with that in mind, then obviously all the ones that we will be able to deliver should be delivered and completed by that point in time. Obviously, we'll still have some stock that we need to look at for enhancing their heating and solutions. As Serena says, we can't unfortunately clean all of them up and change all of them. What we have done is made sure that we've targeted our stock that has the lowest known performance at present, and we're trying to do it on kind of that level playing field. So we're looking at our least energy efficient properties, and we're looking at trying to address those in the short term. And when we have them at void, we're also looking to explore those opportunities so that then we don't have that negative impact on our customers. Invariably, I think where we've got that storage heater, and there's a bit of a perception that the electric storage heaters don't keep the properties as warm as a radiated system, and I think sometimes it's down to the education of the tenant and the occupier about how they actually utilise those systems as well. So we've got a lot of work ongoing on both of those, but we'll do everything that we can to make sure that we don't have any of our tenants in cold properties over the winter.
Yeah, thank you, Craig, because I think as a scrutiny committee, that's one of the most important things for residents going forward, to be warm in winter. Thank you. Have we got, Councillor Dobson, and then I think we'll move on to the next item. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Craig, for that information. Efficiency. The efficiency of a gas boiler is what, 0.8 or something like that. What is it for the air force heat pumps, and what is it then for solar panels? Is there an efficiency there that we can work with?
Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, I can't clarify that, but I will seek that data and come back to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Finally, I don't think have we got any more questions before I move on? I don't want to miss anyone out. Thank you. So if we could then move, please, to item 10, which is a verbal update for Home to Ukraine scheme. Thank you. I understand that Jodie, our head of housing services, she's right behind the fan. Don't want to get her title wrong. So Jodie, I understand that there is some really positive news for south of the county. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So starting off, just wanting to give you this verbal update in relation to the crisis that's been going on around the support that we're offering the Ukraine families. So I think it's beneficial for you to be aware of what our district responsibilities are, how we're linking in with the voluntary sector, and then equally how we're working with county. Currently, as of today, we have 132 hosts that have been identified across South Kesteven, and we've got 85 families that have already been accommodated as part of that scheme. The district responsibilities are ensuring that we undertake the accommodation checks, we do the DBS checks, and then we're equally processing payments for both the guest arrivals and also the hosts. The county responsibilities are around the wellbeing services, the health, education, and ensuring that the families that are arriving from Ukraine are accessing the appropriate services that we can offer them across the county and actively in the district. The voluntary sector are working very hard in supporting the host placements that are going on across the district. And there's some really positive news stories that are coming through around what that support looks like and how food is being provided, bicycles, mobile phones. There's some really, really positive work going on. So basically, I just wanted to kind of wrap that up and ask if anybody does have any questions around that. We do operate an operational group internally as part of the district offer, making sure that if there are any problems such as breakdown relationships with the hosts and the guests, we're proactively managing that in order to try and mediate, maintain that placement so that it doesn't impact on us in any other way. It's really, really positive the way that the officers across the district council are working. And, you know, compared to the county, the demand on South Kesteven around those host offers is significantly high. The county hosts are at 287. So to suggest that we're at 132 today and have actively accommodated 85 families, I think is really positive work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jodie. I just want to say, you know, on behalf of our committee, big thanks to the host families and also to yourself and your team and anyone involved. Just a quick question, is the actual paperwork that's been completed, is that coming through fairly efficiently now, do you know? Thank you, Jodie.
Thank you. There are still challenges. There is still duplication of information that does come through. And we have got a really robust process here at South Kesteven to ensure that when duplication of information has come through, we're identifying that, we're going back operationally to the county group and suggesting improvements. We're undertaking the support to complete the DBS checks, as I said. We're ensuring that they're processed. Obviously, that's an external factor, but from our side, all of our paperwork is absolutely being completed in a timely fashion. If there are any queries that come through from members of the public, I'm ensuring that they're responded to as quickly as we can get to them. So I think it's getting better. There was operational issues at the beginning, but I think that's something to be expected with how quickly we had to respond to the situation.
Yeah, really positive. I have got a question from the floor, but just while I'm on, are we going forward? We, you know, obviously we like to welcome the different nations, particularly to our district. And do you know if we're, you know, with the Ukrainians are now being involved with other communities, getting together? I think I went to a function at Christian Life Centre celebrating all the nations, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I think it would be such a lovely thing for these families as well. Thank you.
Thank you. There is a lot of community spirit, voluntary work going on, communities coming together. And I think that what we do need to get better at is putting those good news stories out there. So one thing that I will do after today is link into the community groups and just give you some of those positive examples so that you can see what that looks like.
Yeah, that'd be great. I move to Councillor Ray Whitton, if you'd like to ask a question, Ray, or observation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just received today an email for an invitation to the Jubilee Church, whereby they 49 Ukrainian residents who are going to turn up with their traditional costume on and to perform some dance movements, and also serve tea and cake and get the chance to meet their hosts as well. That'd be Saturday between 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock. So you're all welcome.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Ray. And perhaps it's something we could just put on an email to encourage people. I don't know how many are allowed to attend and if it's strict invitation, but I, for one, would love to, attend because it was really good last year. Thank you, Ray. Do I have any other questions or observations? Thank you, Hilary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was slightly rocked back on my heels yesterday because I wasn't actually talking to a Ukrainian lady, but I was actually talking via somebody else. And apparently she's here in this country, and somebody asked her about her husband and said, where is he? And she said, oh, he's fighting for the Russians. And I sort of thought, actually, we don't understand the region, but in fact, it is a very Russian region. And there are people who are married to Ukrainians and Russians and vice versa, who are totally split apart. And it's the same as exactly the same thing as the Berlin Wall that divided countries. So it's not quite as easy as it sounds just to have Ukrainian people coming here, because they are lost really to any nation. It's really sad.
Thank you, Hilary. Yeah, I think sometimes, we need to hear some of these stories to make us realise, what's actually going on in the world. Thank you. Yeah, anyone else? Thanks, Jodie. That was really good positive news to finish on, I think. And thank you for your verbal update. So moving on swiftly, we're now on to item 11, which is the work programme for 2022 to 23. This is on pages 59 to 62 of your main agenda pack. It's really for any comment, observations. I've just jotted down, obviously, what we said earlier in the meeting, Andrew, about post-implementation of the regulatory annual report. Is that about right? We need to look at putting that in, don't we? Yeah. Would we be thinking? I mean, obviously, we can discuss this after. When do you think this would be prudent to put in the work programme?
I think, Madam Chairman, just in relation to what we've talked about in the meeting, clearly on the September's meeting, we'd have the usual regulatory update, wouldn't we? And I wondered, with your reference to the heating works over winter, whether the committee would appreciate maybe a verbal report
Definitely
on capital programmes in relation to heating, because it would be, I guess, at that point, probably breaking news in terms of, the date of the committee meeting. And perhaps looking at December's meeting for a progress report on allocation policy and choice-based lettings.
Yeah,
that would give 6 months, wouldn't it?
Is committee members happy with that? I think it's a really good idea. We really need to be on it, I think, and make sure our residents are housed and warm, etc. So is there any other observations? Yep, Councillor Knowles.
Thank you. Just one, Madam Chair. I wonder if it fits, but it fits part of what we've been saying today, and that's been about the survey of tenants and people in the thing, and it's the communication system within the building. Are we eligible to look at this under the rural and community? Because it's been mentioned before here, and I think by yourself as well, that there are problems with the internal telephone service and the service we give to our tenants and our customers in terms of the receiving service. You can't get through on the number. You rarely get through to where you want to go to. I brought this up at finance. I brought this up here, and by chance it came up at licensing, and every single member of the licensing committee agreed that they had problems with the external telephone service and getting through. And I'm wondering about specifically about the complaints. The complaint that was greatest was dealing with the complaint. I wonder how many of those people are people who never got through in the first place. There is in Bourne, there's a problem amongst a group of people with the alarm systems, and it started in Meadow Close. And I was just happened to know one of the people who got the first problem. And we eventually got an electrician down to switch it off because it was just going on. And then the neighbours went, and then several others have gone. And now I'm told, allegedly, that 4 out of 5 people who then tried to report a fault to the office here never got through to anybody who was responsible to be able to deal with it. And so they go back to the first person who had the problem. and said, can you get that councillor down who sorted out your problem to come and sort out this? And what they're doing in actual fact is just getting someone to switch the alarm off. So allegedly, there are alarms being switched off by people in Meadow Close and around that area because they can't get through to anybody here to do, to contact to get a problem solved. So I am conscious that quite a few councillors feel that is a problem. I don't know where it comes up in scrutiny in general. It's not as specific in your list, but it is to do with residents and people from the community being able to complain, being able to get hold of repairs when they need it, which is obviously very often housing, not exclusively about it. So I wonder if it's possible to bring this up before again.
Yeah, a good point. It has been raised within this meeting. I think it was also raised with the chief executive. I can't remember which meeting it was. It is a problem that does want to be looked into. I mean, I think, like you said, sometimes you kind of like get one person telling it who spoke to another person. And I think what's really important, we get dates and when this has happened and get it sorted, really. But sometimes it's a bit of the jungle drums, but you need to know when it happened and who's responsible for not getting back to people. I think that's a fair comment. I'm sure Andrew will come back on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think as you say, Councillor Knowles, it's something that it's not on the list for the scrutiny committee, but clearly housing is. And I wonder in terms of scrutiny supporting the improvement of services, perhaps we bring something to committee to look at communication with tenants across the board. So scope that about the telephone service, our out of hours service, but also I think importantly, the new housing management system that we've got coming in, how that customer relationship works on that. An opportunity then for scrutiny to see right across the board in terms of how we sort of respond to customer contact. And part of that will be statistics, I guess, in terms of calls, but also about future plans as well.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, you spoke about the housing management system, but it'd be really good to know how well it's working and, if it's improving things, basically, I think. But yeah, fair point. And I think councillors, if we're doing our job, I have to say, they will come to us, and then obviously we come and hassle yourselves and thank you. Generally, from my personal point of view, Andrew and his team come back and we try and rectify the problem, but there is a bit of catch up, but it certainly needs improve. It's an ongoing improvement, isn't it? So thank you. Yeah, fair point. So I don't know, is that, we've got a fairly full work programme, etc. But if we could somehow talk about that. Yeah. Would that be feasible, Andrew? Are we happy? Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, I don't think we've got any other comments with the work programme. So I'll move on to item 12, which is any other business. I haven't been made aware of any other business, but has anyone else got anything they wish to say? No, that's great. All right. I just want to thank everyone for attending today. It is hot and humid, so yeah, and a lot of important issues we've gone through, and some good news as well. I think we are moving positively forward, I hope, within housing, because we had a bit of a few years that weren't so straightforward. So yeah, thank you. And I particularly want to thank those officers and members for their reports and updates. Very much appreciated. I know that Debbie and Serena have gone, but if you could just pass on our thanks. Thank you very much. I've not written it down, but I believe our next scheduled meeting is in September. Amy, are you able to tell me the date? I know we'll have a look. I went to write it down. It was on 5th of September, so that'll be our next meeting. God willing, here back in the chamber. So I just want to wish everyone a safe journey and thank you very much for coming, and I hope you can enjoy some of the rest of your day.